Hi, I'm Peggy Farron, and we are live with the Understand Photography Show, where we talk about travel and nature photography. Welcome to episode 10, number 10. 10 weeks so far we've been doing. It's been really fun. You can check out all of, this episode later and all of our previous episodes on our website at understandphotography.com. We also put the show notes on there, so if you need a little refresher, they're all typed right up in there. Before today's show, I just want to tell you quickly about some trips we have coming up. They're all in Florida. We have an Everglades trip coming up in January. Joe Fitzpatrick leads that. He's our Everglades expert. It is a heavily emphasis on bird photography. So if you love the Everglades, you love coming to Florida in January, which is the best time to come on our Everglades trip. That's in January. In February, we're having a ladies-only trip to Mount Dora, Florida, and it's a workshop, but it's a varied workshop. You're going to learn a lot about all types of photography. And then in May, we go to St. Augustine. So again, our website, understandphotography.com. Today, we're going to talk about selling your artwork. So many photographers have gorgeous, gorgeous work, but they want to sell it, but they don't know how. Well, I have got the best guest for you guys. I took a class a couple years ago. It was a 2-day, it was called Art Business Boot Camp, and I met this woman, and she's amazing. Her name is Carolyn Edlund with Artsy Shark. Welcome.
Thank you, Peggy. What an introduction. Now I have to live up to that.
Yeah.
I promise that I will, and I think that that this episode being all about business, marketing, selling your work is going to be of interest to a lot of people because, there's a lot of folks who love photography, but there's something about making sales of your work that is just very satisfying and validating. And so hopefully we'll have some great tips to help people who are photographers and want to sell make some progress and get started doing that.
So now your job is art business consultant, right?
Yes.
Your job title?
It is. Actually, I run artsyshark.com.
Okay.
And it's a website where we feature artists. 3 times a week, we are publishing articles about artists that presents their portfolios and tells their stories. And 2 times a week, I will have business articles about marketing, sales, pricing, all kinds of different business-related articles. Mm-hmm. I also do personalized consulting and work with artists who are trying to structure and get their businesses going. So yeah,
cool.
Very busy.
So cool. And she is amazing. That 2-day class was so good. I learned so much, and it's helped me just in my own life and in helping the people that I teach. Now, you started off as an artist, though, right?
I did, but I was not a photographer, and I will admit up front, I am the worst photographer in the world. The worst. So I always used professional photographers for my portfolio, luckily. But I was a ceramic artist, and I graduated from art school. I started my studio in 1980.
Okay.
In 1980, yes, I'm going to admit. And I had my business for about 20 years. In 2001, I decided that I was kind of burned out, was ready to close my studio, and I actually did. So 21 years, what we did was a lot of production in the studio. So I was wholesaling and retailing. I had a whole staff in the studio. We were selling to 150, 200 stores at any given time.
Wow.
Very busy production studio. But, in a sense, those were the days. I think the economy was roaring. Artists are doing really well. But today there are some other challenges. There's more opportunity, and there's also challenges. And I think that some of the things we'll talk about today will help people address and overcome those.
So you shut your whole studio down?
Did.
And did you just quit working for a while?
No, I did not.
Go right into the consulting?
I did. This is a weird story,
okay.
But it's an interesting one. In 2001, I had back and neck problems from being in the studio, and I was really burned out. And I thought, if I do one more retail fair, I'm going to kill myself. It was really bad, and I decided, let me see if I can get a different job. but who's going to hire me because I've been self-employed for 20 years? So I applied for some jobs, and luckily I got hired almost immediately as a sales rep for an art publishing company. Art publishers license art, could be from photographers or from other artists. And this was the largest art publisher in the country, actually in the world, for the mass market channel, and that was Portal Publications. They are now out of business, but they were a part of Wynne Devon, which is still around as a large art publisher. And I was on their sales force. I loved that job, and I learned a lot about sales, and I learned a lot that I really wish I would have known while I still owned the studio, because I probably would have taken advantage of those skills. And so I did that for about 3 years. And I've also, I would say back in 2009 is when I started Artsy Shark. After I finished with Portal, I was a rep for art publishers, greeting card lines and gift lines for a while.
Okay.
When I started my blog, I just thought, well, you know, there's a lot of tips and knowledge that I had that would really have helped me when I was an artist, so why not just start blogging about it? I took a community college class on how to blog.
Oh, wow.
I learned how to do it, and I've never stopped since. And so I started writing, and slowly, just by persistence, gained an audience. And at this point, we've been named a top 10 art blog by Art Business News. So,
that is so exciting.
Yeah, a lot of traffic.
So you feel like you learned a lot because you had your business for 20 years, but then you were in the art business in different. You were selling. What were you selling you were selling magazine ads, or what were you selling with the
art publishers?
What does
they
that mean?
Create posters, prints, matted art,
I see.
greeting card lines, calendars. So we were literally selling art and art-related products to retail stores.
I see.
So I was a rep, a territory rep, calling on buyers and selling them on a wholesale level.
I see.
But I had been wholesaling for many years my own work to stores all over the country. And in fact, I had sales reps of my own. So it was just stepping into the shoes of a rep.
So now, how did you come up for your blog? You said it's called Artsy Shark. Artsy Shark.
Artsy Shark, yes.
.com.
.com.
How'd you come up with that name? It's really cute.
How did I come up
It's
with that
really
name?
easy to remember, too.
It is. Well, I wanted a name that was easy to remember, and I wanted a name that had a real visual with it.
Oh, yeah.
And so you immediately get this word picture.
Yeah.
And a shark is my logo. It's always been my logo. I'm not a graphic artist. I'm a ceramic artist. So I met a young man who was one of my featured artists, and he did the logo for me, which I had the original of the logo, and when I lost it in a computer crash at one point, I only had a small copy of it. He literally left the graphic art field and became a priest.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I said, and I'm like, I need a copy of that logo. And he goes, sorry, I don't have it anymore. And I'm like, Anthony, please. I'm like, Father Anthony, please. But
that's so funny.
He's a great guy. But we managed to kind of pull it back when I redid, the whole theme of the blog and so forth. We've got a great logo, but it's just, I think it's a word picture. I think it's very memorable, and people say, you're a household word or a studio word. So
Artsy Shark, I love it.
It was
great.
Good choice.
You are creative, I'll tell you. So what about? All right, so in your career as a business consultant, what do you feel like? What was the best accomplishment? Or do you have anything like you're super proud of?
One of the things that we do, that I run around doing, is I do a lot of live workshops for artists. In fact, now it's November. I literally last week just got back from speaking in Maine, Massachusetts, Ohio, and then I spoke at RISD in Rhode Island. Wow. So I've been all over the place traveling, speaking about marketing and sales and putting together your presentation and so forth. And I've written 5 courses as well.
Oh
so
my gosh.
I partnered up with F&W Publications, which is the largest publisher of art magazines and how-to books in the country. And I've written courses with them. They're at Craft Online University.
Okay.
And they keep running these courses on, building a handmade business, marketing, pricing, selling, and so forth.
Craft Online Business.
University, craftonlineuniversity.com.
craftonlineuniversity.com.
That's where some of my courses are
Oh my
housed.
gosh.
So anyway,
now you have courses on your own website too?
I do. I have
That's
an
what I
email
thought.
marketing for artists course, and I'm coming
Oh.
out with a new course soon with a co-author about artists' websites, and so that'll be coming up in 2017.
Well, you know
Very
what? I'm
excited.
going to just touch on the email marketing because I teach a business class for photographers here locally. It's not online yet.
Yeah.
But I say always, you need a newsletter. You need to be contacting your customers, right? So over the years I've been teaching this, I've never received a newsletter from anyone.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
started getting really aggressive. Okay, this class, we wrote outlines of newsletters. They still don't do it.
You know,
Why don't people do what they need to do?
That's a very good question. You know what? If you want to sell your work, you have to take steps to do it.
Yeah.
And your testimonial as to the value of a newsletter, and I get your newsletter, and it is awesome.
Thank you.
And look, it's amazing. And I think I said this to you earlier. I'm like, Peggy, you are everywhere. You're like Wonder Woman. And I know you said, yes, I'm tired. But
Yeah.
you know what? That's how you're getting out the word about your trips. That's how you're presenting your new work. That's how people know about this.
Yeah.
What's going on with you. So you're really keeping people in the loop. And so let's just jump right ahead to something that's just, if you get nothing out of this entire hour, folks, you need to know that email marketing and staying in touch with your audience, people who are already customers of yours and people who are prospective customers of yours, is the most important activity you can do as a marketer. Because what are the odds that somebody is going to buy from you the very first time they see your photography?
What are the odds? They're not very high.
5%.
5%?
5%. 95% of them, are they going to walk away, or are you going to get their email address and are you going to ask them, can I stay in touch with you? You're either going to do that in person at your booth, or you're going to do it online by requesting their address, and you're going to put them on your list. Email marketing is 40 times more effective than Twitter and Facebook combined.
Oh, I
So
was
think
just
about
gonna.
it.
I was just gonna
That's
ask
true.
you because so a lot of people say, "Well, I put it on Facebook." I'm like, "That's not good enough."
So
But
what
40
happens when
40%.
Facebook wants to get in touch with you? They email you. Right?
Yeah, you're right. They
email
notify you on.
They know the power. So I'm telling you, folks, if you get nothing else out of this, get your butt off your chair when you're done with this and go open an account with MailChimp or some kind of an email service provider and start building your list.
And your
Because
class kind of
following up
helps-
and following up, that is what is going to get you sales.
And
We
your-
did write a course on email marketing for artists. It's on my site at artsyshark.com.
Yeah.
Maybe you can share the link at the end
Yeah,
of this.
that
or,
sounds amazing.
you know,
I
when you
didn't
do the
even know
YouTube
that.
video.
I didn't.
I will gift
Should've
you.
done my
I will
re-
gift you
Ooh.
with a free course. It's 130 pages. It's got 7 videos. It's got templates and all kinds of goodies.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it's a great course.
I
And
love that.
and it's $47, but if you use the code creative, just put in all caps the coupon code creative, $10 off, it's $37.
Oh my gosh.
So there's my pitch
See?
before we even get
Discounts.
started. Yeah, discounts before we even get started.
We love discounts.
We do.
And that's another marketing tip, probably. I don't know. You're the marketing lady. I'm just thinking, all the different ways to sell your.
Many ways to sell.
All right. So, what about? Okay. So, who inspires you in your work? I mean, do you?
Well, I would just have to say the initial inspiration was probably my dad, who was self-employed, and I'm self-employed, and as a self-employed person, I think this will really resonate with you as well, and with many of the people in the audience. He said, find out what it is that you love to do, and then find a way for people to pay you to do that. That's pretty awesome, right?
And you started your business when you were young, too.
Well, when
I mean,
got
you've
out of
been an
college-
entrepreneur your
Yes.
whole life.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I have.
Okay.
I guess, a lot of people like the security of having a job where you have set hours and you've got that pension coming. And I think a lot of people in your audience, probably this will hit home with people. There's nothing wrong with having, what we would just consider kind of a straight job or a regular job, but really love being creative, really love that photography. So go ahead and do that. You know, if photography is a side business for you because it's something that you love and that you want to get into selling, I think that's an amazing way to do it. And actually, people who've been in business are some of the best candidates for having their own photography business because they have a sense of, how do I organize myself? How do I sell? How do I need to keep records? What do I need to do as a serious business person? And if you've got that background, I think that's amazing.
Now, tell me like a story of somebody that you helped, like an artist who came to you and said, I'm an artist, I don't know what to do.
Okay.
I know you got good stories.
I do have some good stories. Now, I'm going to tell you one that is not about a photographer, but that's okay. I was doing a workshop a couple years back up in New Jersey, and a young woman was there, and she was a jewelry artist. And she had come to show us some of her work, and she had put beads together. She had bought these, and she had some interesting pieces, and she'd worked a little bit with silver. She was a metalsmith, and she was very good at it. Very talented person. But what she had wasn't really all that different from imported work or anybody else's work. And she was trying to find her way. And so over the course of time, when she started working with me individually, and we took a look at her collection, she identified a couple of core pieces that she'd created that were in the theme of boating. Oh. And yeah, so this was kind of her thing. She lived on the lake, and she had some jewelry that had some boating related imagery and as a theme. And we started there, and she actually developed several product lines that are all around people who live on the lake. They have boats. They love that lifestyle. They live it and breathe it, and that's just something that's important to them. And so she decided she wanted to be able to wholesale her work.
Okay.
Knowing the wholesale market, we worked on developing a line that was cohesive, creating that body of work at a price point that allowed her to be profitable at a wholesale level. And you know, wholesale is when you're selling to stores and they're marking up and selling to the public at a retail price point. So she was able to start out with a line. She went to a trade show. She is selling also wholesale online, and I believe she's getting some reps. She started out with just a couple of local stores, and the last I heard from her, she had 40 wholesale accounts. She had 2 or 3 people who are working for her.
Because how could she keep up with all that?
She's showing up in magazines.
Oh,
she's getting some very large accounts, and we're talking, how can you truly scale your business?
Wow.
So that would be, and for her, that really fulfilled kind of the vision that she had for her business.
Okay, now when you said that to me, okay, now photography maybe is a little bit faster to reproduce, but I just got scared when you said that. How could she keep up with making that much jewelry?
Well,
do you help people with that kind of stuff too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. How do you scale your business?
Because you were a ceramic artist, that's got to be pretty labor intensive as well.
It was, but one of the ways we get around this is just by building systems into our business.
Okay.
How can we either make something in the studio in a streamlined enough way, in an efficient enough way that we can create production ourselves, or, and as a photographer, this might be an option, how can we outsource to a manufacturer, for example, who is going to put our imagery on products.
Okay.
And that we might be able to wholesale.
Okay.
We might look at a different stream of income. Photographers are certainly in a perfect position to license their work so that they might be working with an art publisher. And you remember I talked about Wynne Devon at the beginning of this conversation. That's just one of the art publishers out there. I actually just worked with a photographer, fabulous photographer, who licensed 20 of his images to McGaw Graphics.
Oh, okay.
And another big art publisher. And what they do in the licensing world is they have a contract with the artist or the photographer to license certain images for a certain period of time, usually 2-3 years, to use to manufacture on certain products in a certain geographical area, say North America or globally, so that you have this set contract and they have the rights to reproduce your images, your photographs, but they're not buying your copyright.
Right.
That's a licensing agreement.
You retain your copyright.
You
should always retain your copyright.
Well, it's possible to sell your copyright, but that's a different type of an agreement. But yeah, so that's kind of another stream. And one of the things we might talk about here before we get to those 5 mistakes is creating multiple ways of making money.
Okay.
And I'm willing to bet, Peggy, that you've done that in your own business.
Oh, my. As you know, I'm pulled all over the place.
Yeah.
But tell me what if I'm, strictly a nature photographer and I've got all this beautiful landscape art? What would be multiple ways to sell
Well, you could
that?
license your
Licensing
art.
it, okay.
You could be selling it retail.
And when you say that, you mean at a gallery?
Well, no, retail would be if you were at an art fair.
Oh, okay.
For example, we're here in Florida, and as you know,
we have a lot of art fairs.
A lot of top art fairs down here.
Sure
Some really
do.
beautiful shows. You could be selling retail out of your studio.
Okay.
Have an open studio sale. You could have a pop-up shop, something like that. You could be licensing. You could work within the gallery system, which is on a consignment basis.
Okay.
So if you were working with that fine art gallery, you'd be turning your work over to them, and you would be getting paid as they sell your work. And that would be consignment, which is a very typical a very typical gallery model, gallery arrangement.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of ways to sell.
So, all right, let's change the subject a little bit. What technologies can help artists, I guess? What are you excited about lately? What's going on?
Okay, I love technology.
Okay.
And not just digital. A lot of photographers work in that digital realm. They have almost too many tools. The choices are endless, right?
True, yeah.
But I love some other technologies too.
Okay.
And some of them, for example, I love 3D printing. I'm just kind of a big fan. I think it's really awesome. I'm not quite sure how you might use it as a photographer.
I don't know.
But there are other technologies that help you scale your business quickly. Laser cutting is certainly one.
Okay.
So if you could use that in your studio, I think that's awesome. Sublimation printing. Now this is something really cool and absolutely could be used by photographers.
Okay.
Now I have a story here about an artist that I know. She's not a photographer, folks, but it doesn't matter because it applies to what you do too. She actually was painting with alcohol inks on tile.
Okay.
And her work, alcohol inks, gives a very flowing, beautiful, kind of a watercolor look. And she was doing these beautiful landscapes. And she's painting them on ceramic tiles over and over and over, one at a time.
Gosh.
Right? That would be production, but in a hands-on way. And then she discovered sublimation printing. And what this technology does is it takes an image that you can put into your computer and you can alter it into what size you want to make it, alter the colors and so forth. And it is a method of printing using heat that actually works on many different substrates. So it would work on metal, it would work on ceramic, you could put it on fabric, you could put it on plastic, many different surfaces. You could put it on a mug, for example.
Okay.
And she was putting it on ceramic tiles and then started putting her images on jewelry. Sublimation printing literally turns the inks into a gas and then forces them into the surface of the substrate so that they literally are embedded. They're not just on the surface. They're not going to scratch off. They're not like silk screening or something. They are literally embedded, and they're wonderful because they give a very true representation. The colors are very true.
Wow.
And it's a fabulous, very interesting technology. So here's what this artist did. She's now bought her own sublimation printer, and I think she paid $3,000 or $4,000, and she's quit her job. Her husband's getting ready to quit his job, and they're going to be putting her images on all types of products. So what does that do for your business?
Wow.
Number one, you're not just working in one format anymore. Suddenly you can offer your collection or your line on tons of different products at tons of different price points. How could this expand what you're offering to your customers?
That's cool. Yeah.
We're going
You have
up and
so
down,
much,
side
I
to
know.
side. We're all over the place.
That's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That is cool. So, all right, so let's back up to, let's say, because people who come through my training center or, take our online classes, they're usually beginner to intermediate photographers. So they really want to sell their artwork, but they have no clue. Like, what would be the first step?
That's a great question. And I actually love working with beginners. And one of the reasons is that when you talk to a beginner and you tell them what's possible, and they're not set going down one particular road, then the world just opens up for them and anything is possible. And there's nothing I like better than talking to somebody about something they've never heard of, than talking to someone who said, oh my gosh, I wish I would have learned this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So if you're a beginner, hey, you tuned in at the right time. So I would say this absolutely taps into kind of the theme behind what we're talking about, which is the 5 biggest mistakes that artists make.
Okay.
And as beginners, or even not so beginners, one of the big mistakes that people make as artists or photographers is just in their portfolio itself. Because they may not have a clear direction, they might have a lot of interests, but their portfolio might have some of this and some of that and some of that, and they're, pictures of animals, and they're underwater, and they're up in the trees, and then maybe they've got some still life work, and they've got some abstracts, and they've got this and that, and it's just all over the place. The problem with being what I call a generalist is that you're so diverse that nobody really gets what you are really about. I encourage people to have a direction, a focus, and a niche. If you have a niche that you are in, then you really have, I think, the power to move forward in a very directed way. And I think that artists who are all over the place should decide, what is it that I really love to do? Or at least be able to put their work into 1 or 2 very strong collections that are in very cohesive groupings with a signature style that says, this is my work. So that if I saw your photography and it was all hung on the wall, I would know that every single one of those photographs was taken by you. What is it that you do that tells me this is my work? This is what makes me different from everyone else. There's a zillion photographers out there, right? What distinguishes you that makes you different from everyone else? Because if you don't have that, and if you don't know what it is, and if you're not able to tell the world in general what it is, then you're going to get passed over because people can't really relate to and remember you. What is it that makes your work memorable and different from everyone else?
So it's not enough just to have beautiful images. You have to.
There are a lot of beautiful images out there, absolutely.
I often judge at our local art association. And it's not just photography, it's all types of art, and it's mostly photographers and jewelers. Those are the 2 main, it's like we need more sculptors.
We need saturated categories.
So anyway,
yes.
But it's so typical for photographers especially to not have a style.
Yes.
One guy, and I know this guy, he's an amazing photographer. He put one really bright, cheery flower picture, and it was on acrylic, so it was shiny and bright, and it was beautiful. And then he had this dark black and white cityscape, and it was beautiful. But I mean, he had 3, I can't remember the 3rd picture, but he had 3 pictures that didn't even look like they were from the same photographer. And he wasn't qualified for the show. And I felt so bad because he came up to me, he's like, what happened? Because he was definitely, his pictures were good enough. But
they were all over
all
the
the
map.
judges just went.
It's not necessarily that you don't have talent, because your work could be incredible. But unless I say, yes, oh, I love that. I love what this guy does. If you're confusing me, then I don't know where to go with that. And if you're online showing your work, say on your website, and I don't really get it, if I'm confused or I don't get a sense of it, what do? I click away. I just go to the next. I mean, you're just gone. So what are you going to do to grab someone's attention and to pull it in a very compelling collection of work that you're sharing? And no matter what medium you are in, this is so important. Who are you and what defines you, and how can you explore in great depth that direction that really pulls you and that you want to share with the world?
And that was one of the biggest things I got out of your 2-day workshop.
Yeah.
That workshop was you gave so many ideas on how to help hone your niche or find your niche.
And use that word niche. Yeah. You're using that word. And I think, the next problem that people have is literally their images. If you were not a photographer, if you were a jewelry artist, for instance, that other big group that we talk about all the time, and I would say the second biggest mistake that they make is that they have horrible photographs. Now, who is a terrible photographer? Me, I'm terrible. I'm the worst. I'm like, I can't get the focus together. I've learned a few things. I've taken a couple good photos. That's my limit. Luckily, artists send me beautiful photos, so I don't need to worry about taking too many of them myself. But I've just got to tell you, if you are not a photographer, the value of your work is conveyed by the images that you show. If someone is not holding your work, looking at it in person, if you are sharing your work in any way through your marketing efforts online to a jury, you'd better have outstanding photos, and I mean money shots, gorgeous photos that just make your work look better than it is in person, because your competition has that. Everybody knows artists who are well known. They're outstanding in whatever medium they are in. They get into all the shows. Their work's in all the the magazines. Everybody knows them. Why? Because they have outstanding images. They're able to show their work at a higher level than what's out there in the crowd.
Now,
so you need to kind of reach that higher level.
When you're talking about that, you're talking about the presentation of the artwork, not the actual artwork, because it's a little, for us as photographers.
I'm talking about the presentation.
So
if
what
you're
else?
a jewelry artist, if you're a painter, I want to see outstanding photos. Okay, photographers, we know, no glare, no poor focus, the lighting should be right, no horrible backgrounds. If you're a really good photographer and you have friends who are artists and you want to be really kind to them, help them learn to take great shots. And I know, Peggy, you teach people, and you've written an article for me that was just very, very well received, how to take photos of your artwork if you can't afford a professional photographer.
Yeah, but it is a nice little side business
It is a nice side business.
Because I have people bring their art to my studio, and I'll photograph it for them.
But I have something to say to all you photographers out there. If you're like, well, we've got the photography part down. I'd like to talk about the portfolio of a photographer. Okay. One of the biggest problems that I see photographers have is that they've got 50,000 pieces in their portfolio. And it's this massive overkill. And they need to hone it down to meaningful pieces in a manageable, critical mass.
Okay.
I've had photographers say, I was out in this field of flowers and I have this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And I'm like, no, maybe two.
Yeah.
You need to be able to choose. And I think, do you find that this is a big problem for photographers to be actually able to weed out
That's a
images?
Good point. That's such a great point. How many images is the right amount?
Well, I think it depends on what you're doing. If your body of work is very narrow, and just today I looked at a photographer's work. I looked at his portfolio, and all that this guy photographs is insects. And it's really interesting. I mean, I'm like, I love it, and in a very interesting way, too. Now, if he had 50 photos of different insects, that would be cool with me.
Okay.
I don't want to see 2,000. Otherwise, it would just be like...
It's too many.
Please. But
And they have to be
Yeah.
different.
Well, I don't.
It doesn't.
I
You don't want
want to
like.
see the. I don't want to see them posed in. In minuscule
You don't want the
changes.
same. Yeah.
That's too much. If you want to sell your work and you have 5 different choices that are so similar, how will anyone make a decision? They don't.
Yeah. That's.
They can't make a decision.
You
You've overwhelmed them, and then they just leave. So here's what I would suggest: if you've got a fabulous shot, and then maybe one alternative, and somebody's looking at, maybe it's a picture of a horse or something. This is really great, and that one too. What I would do if I were you, you know which one is the best seller, right? Or as the photographer, you know which one would look really fantastic. Be consultative in selling and saying, I love both of these equally. This one would look great with a certain mat and a certain frame. I could really see that, as a centerpiece, a real focal point. This other piece is slightly different. Which one do you like? And let's talk about the strengths of it so that you have some input into how they might hang it or frame it or where it might be appropriate. Perhaps they need to buy both because as a set, that would be a really perfect presentation.
She's always selling.
Upsell. Right.
That's good.
It could
That
be.
is really good.
So in your presentation, when you are showing someone your photography, are you showing them in groupings?
And you
Maybe
should be.
it should be, because that's what I call a suggested serving. We put them on the wall and we show them in a grouping, and they're like, wow, look how much greater impact these make as a grouping than it did if I only bought one piece.
Yeah, I love that. That's good.
And you don't even have to say a word, you're just going to show it. Photographers know the power of an image, so you're showing that powerful image of your work in a grouping.
That's awesome. That's great.
Or a suggested way to frame it.
Yeah.
Or frameless, if that's better.
Right.
Or a suggested size. If something that you have would look great as a 24 by 36, show an in situ photo that, of a really powerful impact that it's making in a room.
Okay, so I'm going to back up to the question for the beginner. The most important thing is to get the portfolio together and get it together with a niche, figure out how you're going to print, if you're going to do canvases or whatever, however you're going to offer it.
Sure.
Figure all that stuff out. The portfolio has to be tight. Right. So that would be the first step. So then what?
Well,
I know what I would do. I would hire Carolyn. Help me, please.
One thing, and I think that this actually is something that when you're putting together that portfolio that you just talked about, who is going to buy this from you?
So
who's your audience?
So know your audience.
Who is your audience?
Okay.
If you have got all those great photos of nature or birds, and I know you've got a lot of photographers you speak with who photograph birds.
Oh, right. Okay, so say I'm a bird photographer.
Yeah. So are you photographing certain types of birds? Maybe I know a photographer and all she does is hummingbirds.
Oh,
and she has this astonishing. I mean, those birds are just amazing in and of themselves.
I know they are.
All she does is hummingbirds.
Wow.
That's her niche. And you know what? There are collectors, there are fans, there are people who love to feed the hummingbirds. That's her niche. So maybe your niche would be pelicans. Since you're in Florida. Or what if you only took photos of birds in a certain preserve, a certain area?
Like the birds of the Everglades.
The birds of the Everglades, and people who love the Everglades, or the birds in the Keys. If they love the Keys, their vacation home is in the Keys, or it's a memorable place that they want to come back to, a great family vacation, perhaps they were married there, then you could tap into a certain interest of theirs, which is the Everglades or the Keys or that memorable
Okay, so all right,
trip.
so I'm honing it down. So now
Yes.
I've got my portfolio. It's tight. It's full of birds from the Keys.
Yep. Yep.
How do I reach that out? I got my audience defined. Well, wait.
You are defining your audience because they're people. Clearly, they either travel to the Keys or they live there, or they want to go there. Maybe their dream is to go on this fabulous vacation to Key West. I mean, they haven't been there.
Yeah.
So and interestingly enough, and I think this really ties into photography.
Okay.
When I worked for the art publisher and we sold posters and prints, what was the #1 category? Always. It was called Bon voyage. They were travel posters of the most amazing places
That makes
you
sense.
were dying to go to.
Yeah.
So what did you do with it? You bought that poster and you put it up in your cubicle, or you put
you
it in
dreamed.
you dreamed. You just wanted to be in Maui, or you just wanted to be in the Keys, because you know, who wants to be working in a cubicle, right? That's boring.
Oh, great point.
And this brought another element.
That's a great
that
point.
has a lot of resonance, a lot of emotional value to that person.
Yeah, that's good.
So, you know, what if you could connect online, in groups, in vendors or stores or websites that catered to people who love the Keys, and that you would present the birds of the Keys. Maybe you have a book about it. What a wonderful keepsake.
So, okay, so
or
I've
a dream
got,
book.
So I've got, and I don't live in the Keys. So how am I going to sell to people like that? Would I be on the internet?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I mean,
on my own
certainly-
website, but how would people find me?
Well, you could sell on your own website, but I'm willing to bet that there's people who are fans of the Keys, Facebook groups where people love the Keys.
So you would just start posting and talking about the Keys?
Join those groups, find people who love the Keys, invite them to your website, put your email marketing opt-in, get them on that email list, and every week they're going to be receiving a new picture of great birds from the Keys, or, you know, beach shots or whatever it is that you do, because you found people who really care about that. And when they're ready to make that purchase, who are they going to buy from?
Of course you.
You, because they've already got that connection and they
And
like
you know
you.
what? You just made that easy.
Yeah.
Because one of the problems we have is a lot of people who come to this area, who take a lot of my classes,
Sure.
they are either snowbirds or they're retired or semi-retired, and they don't have the energy and ambitious to go full, you know, like I'm going to spend 80 hours a week, you know, building up my photography business. They want to dabble. And that's,
Sure, and that's fine.
And that's a dabble.
You know,
That's
and there are
that's
quite a
a
few-
way. That's like a good way to put your baby toe in and start becoming known without a whole lot of effort.
Right, and you know, I think that it follows. And we're talking about these 5 steps that
I know.
5 mistakes people make,
And we're going to summarize those because we're
Yeah.
talking about them, but we're all over the place.
Well, the first one is that they don't have a portfolio put
portfolio.
together. Number 2, they don't have a good presentation of their portfolio.
Right.
Number 3, they do not know who their audience is, and you need to know who should be buying from you. Why? Because you need to connect with them. You need to go where they are. How can you find those people? If your audience are wine lovers, hey, you need to be at the wine festival. You need to be out there, you know, connecting with those people. And then that's 3. The 4th, I think, absolutely ties in with your audience, and it is the story that goes with your photography.
Okay.
You know, art is a very emotional purchase. Would you agree with that? People fall in love
That's
with
so true.
what you do. And I'm thinking back to an art show my husband and I went to last fall. I think it was up in Sarasota, and there was this, and it was bird photography, actually. I don't remember the artist. I wish I would plug him, but his work was incredible, and he had this absolutely stunning picture of a heron, kind of at sunset, and the way that the sunset and the water was reflecting, the bird almost looked blue, and just gorgeous. And so, you know, he was telling us where he took this photo. We'd met him in person, and it turned out I wasn't quite sure if this would fit the space in my home, and it didn't fit the space, and I didn't make that purchase. But knowing the artist and him being able to pull out a postcard at the show, and my taking a little cell phone shot of the image and writing down the dimensions, he was so helpful to me in telling me about that story and wanting to say, look, you can even take this home if you want to. You can always return it to me. I mean, just that kind of service, just that connection. I really wanted to buy what he made. As he talked about the birds and where he went to take their photos, and what type of bird is this? Where do they live? Why is that meaningful? Living in Florida, I love having a Florida home. Everything in my house is about Florida.
Oh, really?
I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy, you know, a mountain view. Everything's about the ocean, the fish, the beach, because that's what I love. So, who is your customer, and how do you share with them the story behind what it is that you do.
Your art.
Where were you when you took it? How did you get there? What were the difficulties in shooting those photos?
You know what? It's so funny you say that because we have a very famous photographer in this area called Clyde Butcher. You probably know who he is. And the first time I saw him speak, I thought, wow, this guy's really good at selling and marketing. He put, it was at the Naples Art Association, he put this huge picture of his printer on the wall, and then he had this story next to it, basically making it sound like he was the only one with a printer like that in the world, which he wasn't, of course. But you were so impressed that he had this big printer, and he had, I mean, I think it was like 8 feet tall, the picture of his printer.
Wow.
But that was the story of how he does these large format printing, and it was interesting.
So important. It is so important. Number one, it completely validates you as an expert and a professional with what you're doing. When you saw that this man could make an 8-foot picture out of his printer.
No, it was of his printer.
Of his printer. I mean, you knew that he was a pro. And there is actually an artist in my area, and she has a huge printer too. She's a painter, but she prints out work in any size you want, and she'll even frame it. I mean, and I know her, and I can tell her story. And when people buy your photography, they buy that bird from the Everglades or whatever they buy, and they know you or they know about you if they haven't met you, they'll tell your story when they show your photo to other people who admire it in their home. I bought this from this artist in Florida, and he takes these photos in the Everglades. This particular shot was on an early morning. It was just really, now go through, they love that. Why?
That's such a great tip.
It becomes part of the owning of the art.
Right.
The story is you can't separate it.
I love this. I'm learning so much.
The reason they buy from you is because of your story and because they love it. They love the image and they love about the artist, and they've met the artist or they know about the artist, and they're on their list, and they are proud to own a piece of yours, and they're going to talk about that. And it's pride of ownership.
It's funny because I'm thinking of another story. Did you ever get those greeting cards in the mail by some handicapped artists or whatever? Because they always go into the handicap of the artist, and then they're selling the greeting cards. And I thought, that's really effective because I have paid for them because you're like, this person overcame something. I want to, and it was nice artwork too.
That's very true, and I think that's actually kind of an offshoot of the story, and that's cause marketing. If you say 10% of all the proceeds will be donated to breast cancer research, especially if you're a cancer survivor and you've got that personal connection, or there's a charity, a children's charity, or something that the shopper cares about. Have you ever noticed that if you donate a piece of art to a charity for an auction, where do the prices go? Way, way up.
Yeah.
They will overpay for your work because they want to support that cause. That's something that's near and dear to their hearts. What are some other things that are really valuable just to shoppers in general? Made in America.
Yeah.
Handmade.
Yeah.
Hand printed.
Yeah.
Limited edition.
That's true. That's right.
Signed by the artist. What if you put a certificate of authenticity in with the work?
Ooh,
and you
God, you're
package that in?
good.
All of these are ways to add value. And as we tell our story and we add value, our work becomes even more important and worth more money to the people who buy from us. So there's our ways to, you were talking about upselling.
Yeah.
Well, this is just increasing the value of what we make.
All right, so what we're
that's the fourth.
We're number 4. Okay.
That is the fourth, is to tell your story.
Okay.
So we've got a great body of work that makes sense in a cohesive signature style, in a direction that is our own. Number 2, the presentation of your work. So if you're not a photographer, we want excellent photography. If you are, hey, I'd like to see a photo of your work in situ, in a great environment. Third, we talk about understanding your audience and who ought to be buying from you. Who do you really connect with, and who can you tell your story to? And fourth is that story. What is the story about you, about your work, about how you make it, that is meaningful to the people who are going to buy from you? Because they just eat that up. They love that. So that's the fourth. So what's the fifth?
What's the fifth?
Is you got to get started and you got to get your butt in gear and you have to take action. It's easy to sit around and talk about this, but what are you going to do first? If you are serious about selling what you make, then you've got to have a plan. Your plan can't be, oh, I'll just do some more marketing this year. That's kind of vague. But if your plan is, hey, I need to organize my portfolio. I'm going to do that this week. I'm going to understand what it is that I do, and then I'm going to start writing a paragraph about each piece that I want to present in my collection. And I want to make that emotional connection. Are you going to start honing your collection for the right audience, finding that audience, and move forward with, with marketing it?
Wow,
You got to make steps. You got to check them off the list.
You are good.
And even small increments. Today, I will review my portfolio. Then I'll take a nap. Whatever.
You know, it's funny you said that because I was interviewed for a podcast called Shutterbug Life. And the man who puts it on, his name is Linford Morton, and we became friends. And I've never even met him face to face, okay? And it was, I don't know, more than a year ago. But we hit it off over the phone, and we had a great interview on the podcast. And I don't even remember how it started, but we decided that we get together on the phone every week to review our goals.
Wow.
What did you do this week? Or what are you going to do next week? Because otherwise you get so caught up in life. Life is so busy.
It is.
So we do
one
one or
or
two
things. It's very easy to get
things.
distracted. I love that strategy, Peggy. And honestly, without even giving it a name, what you've done is you have an accountability partner.
Yep.
And the two of you are keeping each other on track.
Yep.
And so he's going to say, so Peggy, you were going to change your website. How'd that work for you?
Yeah.
And without being judgmental or screaming at you,
Oh, yeah.
if you said, I blew it this week, I got all tied up in this and that, then he's going to say, okay, well, let's put it on the schedule for next time. And let's see in a week from now, what have you gotten done?
That's exactly what we do.
And you know what? That's an easy thing for photographers. They can do that completely free. I hope that everyone who's listening to this and artists who want to get serious are going to get involved in a community where there's other photographers and artists there and trade ideas, learn resources, and meet other people who might be a good accountability partner for you. Because then you can do that completely free. I mean, it's just a way to, as you're doing, keep yourself honest, keep yourself moving forward, and meet those goals that you have.
It is so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day stuff. And there's and just like I was saying, I feel like I'm being pulled in a million directions sometimes. So it's nice that somebody says, you got to get on this. And I do it to him. We do it to each other.
Yeah, I've done the same thing. It's like I have this one major project, and it keeps getting put off week after week, and it's never, So
I can relate to that.
Yep.
Okay, so now earlier you told me that you have a call to artists going on right now.
I actually do.
So tell us about that.
It started yesterday, and thank you. So if you're interested in being featured and promoted as an artist, and you've got a great portfolio and a great story, those would be perfect people to apply. If you go to Artsy Shark, and that's ArtsyShark.com, I have a call for artists going on right now. I'm looking for 48 artists to feature and promote in the coming months. It will run through the winter months into 2017. We feature 3 artists a week. We present their portfolio, and in their own words, they tell their story, their inspiration, what's important to them, their technique, and so forth. We share a link to their website. We share a link to their Facebook page, their Twitter feed, whatever social media you're on, so that people can see your work. And we have so many visits to our site and so many subscribers that your article gets placed in front of thousands and thousands of eyes. Now, I can't promise anything because I don't know what happens, in any individual case, but I've had artists who got galleries, who made sales, who got licensing deals, who got invited to be in exhibits through their feature. And their feature's permanent. It's on there forever. Currently, we have over 850 artists who have been featured so far. They're all on the site. We have a big site. And they can always share their link. So, folks, the deadline is November 18th, 2016 at midnight Eastern Time. So go to artsyshark.com and check out Become a Featured Artist and look at it, see if it's right for you. There is a jury fee of $20 and there is a submission form to fill out, and we do evaluate each artist based on their website. So you would need at least a Facebook page or some kind of an online presence to apply.
Wow, that is so exciting.
Yeah, and all mediums are eligible.
Oh my gosh.
We always have some very cool artists.
Well, your website is very, very heavily trafficked too.
It is. It is. We get over 35,000 visitors a month.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Now tell us your website one more time.
artsyshark.com.
artsyshark.com. And again, we're going to have that in the show notes on the Understand Photography website as well. So I think that, God, you're a good guest. I learned so much. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't have to hardly say anything.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, I'm a speaker. I do workshops all the time on these topics. And the most wonderful part of it, and you asked me what's the most satisfying thing to me, is really watching people put their dreams into action and creating those goals and then reaching them. So it's just a privilege to speak to artists who are beginning, to speak to artists who want to get started, to be on a show like this and just to talk and just do something absolutely free and say, hey, get out there, get started. You know, there's so many resources that you can take advantage of as a photographer. I know, Peggy, that you offer a lot of them absolutely free. Great tips, great opportunities, resources, and so forth. So thank you for having me, and thank you for helping photographers out.
Oh, thank you. Carolyn Edlund, Artsy Shark.
Thank you.
Okay, so next week's show, we have a guy who I've known a long time. I have not known him well, but I've known him a long time because Gareth Rotcliffe and his wife, Jan Soderquist, were big wedding photographers when I started off here in this area. Well, Gareth has made the transition from wedding photographer to landscape artist, and he has got a fascinating story. I mean, he did a Kickstarter campaign, he did all kinds of stuff. Right now he's in the second stage of the Great American Coastline because, as Carolyn said, he found a niche. So he's going to be a great guest. That's next Friday at 4 o'clock on the Understand Photography Facebook page. The show notes from today are going to be on the understandphotography.com website. Thank you so much for watching the Understand Photography show. We'll see you next Friday at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.
Get up!